I am the greatest.
We've all heard of the people's champion, Muhammad Ali, often known as the greatest of all time. But what many might not fully grasp is the profound influence he has left on this incredible sport, even till this day. Today we will deep dive how Muhammad Ali truly transcended boxing from a mob-ran sport to one of the most popular sports of today. And by the end of the video, you will understand the influence this one man has had on boxing and the world in general. To really understand how Muhammad Ali changed the scope of boxing forever, let's take it back first to about 39 years before Ali was even born, to first talk about one of his boxing heroes, Jack Johnson. Many boxing historians say that Jack Johnson walked so that Ali could run. Jack Johnson fought in a time where black boxers faced severe discrimination. They were never given any title shot opportunities in the early 1900s due to their white counterparts believing that a black man winning the heavyweight title would make the belt less prestigious. Black boxers were thus limited to the colored heavyweight title. But Jack Johnson was not one to settle and demanded an opportunity to fight for the world heavyweight title. Jack Johnson was a bold, boisterous, and fearless black man who believed that he was the best fighter on the planet. At the time, Tommy Burns was the heavyweight champion, and Johnson pursued Burns wherever he went for 2 years, taunting him when he traveled to London, Paris, and between states. Anywhere Tommy Burns was, Johnson was there. Jack Johnson's persistency eventually paid off when an Australian promoter offered to put on the fight and proposed Tommy Burns with an offer he couldn't refuse. A $30,000 payday, adjusted for $1 million in today's time, whilst Jack Johnson was only offered $5,000, adjusted for $166,000. The fight was scheduled for the 26th December 1908 in Sydney, Australia. Johnson did not disappoint, winning in the 14th round when the fight was stopped by the police. They also demanded the motion film be stopped. Till this day, we have never got to see the recording of the end of this fight. This win set the precedent for black boxers to believe that they could finally fight for the heavyweight title, breaking the color barrier that had previously limited them. As a champion, Jack Johnson was despised by the masses for his flamboyant and arrogant style, as well as trash-talking opponents during fights. Something Ali would also later be hated for. Many will agree that Jack Johnson was one of the first boxers to transcend the sport of boxing, especially for black fighters. But with Muhammad Ali, or then known as Cassius Clay, his introduction into the sport felt like an injection of energy that had never been felt before, especially in a time where boxers were becoming corrupt by working with the mob and fixing fights for their financial gain. The reputation of boxing was tainted, and it needed someone new to bring the spotlight back to it. Ali stood out from the rest. He was a dazzling, charming, handsome black man who was also fearless. Muhammad Ali was the first person to trash-talk his opponents before, during, and after fights. In that time, boxers respected one another and rarely ever disrespected each other. He was known for his teasing insults during weigh-ins, in which he would beautifully recite poetry and predict which round he would win his fights, as well as calling out opponents for their unattractive looks, all whilst maintaining that he deserved to hold the heavyweight champion because he was so pretty. To instigate a title fight, he once drove to Sonny Liston's house at 3 a.m. to call out the champion, shouting out to the champ, "Come on out of there, you big ugly bear, I'm gonna whoop you now." Liston, furious at being woken up at such hour, gave in to Ali's demand. This encounter showed the extreme lengths that Ali would go down to call out his opponents for a fight and win the mental game before the bout even commenced. These were instances that had never been seen in boxing before. He galvanized the boxing world and had all eyes on him, whether it was good or bad. Ali learnt this controversial art of promotion from observing Gorgeous George, a famous wrestler in the 1940s, who was also known for his flamboyant and arrogant style. He would constantly predict how he would win his fights, inciting wrestling fans, because the crowd wanted to watch George lose his prediction. Regardless, the trick worked, as George was the highest-paid wrestler at that time. A young Ali saw this and knew that he would have to implement this in his boxing career. The fighting style of Ali was something that had never been seen before in a heavyweight fighter. Ali was an extremely unorthodox boxer. He was light on his feet, bounced around the ring, constantly confusing opponents with his lightning hand speed. He often kept his hands low and relied on his quick reflexes, rapid head movement, and amazing footwork to evade and dodge punches. He made boxing look beautiful for the average spectator. Later on in his career, when some of his natural gifted abilities diminished due to his 3-year layoff, which we will discuss later on in the video, he turned more into an intelligent strategic fighter, utilizing the famous rope-a-dope tactic and also going toe-to-toe with some of the best heavyweights in the 70s, eating punches, having a durable chin, using the high guard and not moving as much as he would have in his early 20s. Some of these techniques had never been seen before, showcasing how truly special and unique he really was. Many of us know Ali for being the first boxer to bring social issues to the face of the world and displaying his pride in being a black nationalist during a period of heightened racial tensions. The 60s was known for the infamous anti-racism riots. Events like the Birmingham and Alabama riots in 1963 and the Harlem riots in 1964 really showcased how frustrated African Americans were with the situation that most of them were confined to. Half of Black America lived below the poverty line, leading to many of these neighborhoods being plagued by crime, prostitution, and high levels of drug intake. Ali silently joined the Nation of Islam in 1962, after being mentored by his then-friend Malcolm X, who advised Ali to join the Nation of Islam to be an inspiration for other black people. After his major upset win against Sonny Liston on February 25, 1964, he publicly joined the Nation of Islam and changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. The news at the time caused widespread anger across the country, as he was the heavyweight champion joining a group that was dubbed as a terrorist organization for their views on racial issues. However, Ali did not care about what his detractors said, as he believed he was allowed to believe what he wanted to believe and was allowed to be called what name he wanted to be called. This was an issue that had never occurred before, and it left the country confused and divided. But before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Eventually, there was a way to bring Ali down, and it was by being drafted into the Vietnam War. Once Ali was notified of his status, he swiftly refused to serve the army and publicly declared himself as a conscientious objector due to being a religious minister in the Nation of Islam, as well as saying that he didn't believe in fighting for the country when black people were being discriminated against every day. Ali was eventually arrested on April 28, 1967, for refusing to join the U.S. Army. Later that day, the New York State Athletic Commission suspended his boxing license, and the World Boxing Association stripped him of his title. Other boxing commissions followed suit, meaning he was unable to obtain a license to box in any state for over 3 years, all for standing up for his beliefs. But Ali believed so much in his stance that he was prepared to go to jail. Eventually, as the years passed, the public grew frustrated with the war, and many started to sympathize with Ali's stance of refusal. He took the case to the Supreme Court and was eventually found not guilty of draft evasion in 1971, and was finally allowed to resume boxing. Ali was the most famous person in the world in the mid-60s to 80s. Any bout with Muhammad Ali's name in it was guaranteed to sell tickets, even all the way to the end of his career when it was evident that he was suffering with the Parkinson's disease. One of these famous bouts was the fight of the century in 1971, a heated contest between Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. Both men were undefeated champions, and this fight would have cemented the winner as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. The fight was widely regarded as the biggest boxing match in history and arguably the single most anticipated and publicized sporting event ever. An international audience observed the spectacle. It was the first time that two undefeated boxers who held or had held the world heavyweight title fought each other for that same title. The fight was attended by some of the most prestigious celebrities, politicians, and athletes, to say a few. The likes of Frank Sinatra, Bill Cosby, Diana Ross, Aretha Franklin, and U.S. Senators Ted Kennedy and Hubert Humphrey all attended this famous bout. The fight overall grossed about $46 million, $300 million in today's time, and set a record with 2.5 million tickets sold at closed-circuit venues. 3 years later, he fought George Foreman in the famous fight dubbed as the Rumble in the Jungle in the then-unknown Zaire in Central Africa, now known as present-day Democratic Republic of Congo. At that time, there had never been a heavyweight fight that had ever occurred in Africa. Both boxers were offered $5 million each, adjusted for $30 million, by the then dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. It was an insane amount of money at that time. This fight introduced the career of the infamous Don King, a convicted murderer who wanted his piece of the pie in the boxing world by coming in as a brash, well-spoken boxing promoter. This fight put Zaire on the map, and a famous chant swept around the villages near where Ali resided. He eventually used the chant to sell the fight while still connecting with the locals. Ali Bomaye, which meant Ali kill him in the language of the Zairians. The fight record estimated 50 million viewers on closed-circuit television and almost 1 billion viewers worldwide, grossing an estimated $100 million in revenue, adjusted for $590 million. But the most famous Ali fight was the Thrilla in Manila, hosted in the Philippines in 1975. The fight was against Ali's arch-nemesis Joe Frazier, and it was the third and final finale between the two. This fight is universally regarded as one of the best and most brutal fights in boxing history. It was viewed by a record of over 1 billion people worldwide, at a time where the world population was at about 3.6 billion. 100 million viewers watched on closed-circuit television, and this fight generated more than $150 million in revenue, adjusted for $800 million. The fight was promoted by Don King. Comment if you want a detailed video on Don King's rise to being one of the biggest boxing promoters in history. Ali was also the first boxer to be involved in a cross-martial arts fight, when he faced legendary wrestler Antonio Inoki on the 26th of June 1976 in Japan. The fight is seen as a precursor to modern mixed martial arts, now named as MMA. The bout involved Ali using his hands to box, whilst Inoki was allowed to wrestle and kick on the ground. The contest ended in a draw and was watched by 1.4 billion viewers worldwide, grossing $20 million, adjusted for $100 million. It is no doubt that over his career, Ali's fights easily grossed more than $1 billion if adjusted for inflation. Muhammad Ali has been the most influential boxer and athlete ever to grace this planet. Nowadays, it is normal to see boxers trash-talking their opponents in weigh-ins and stirring up the crowd to sell tickets in most combat sports. If two fighters don't partake in trash-talking before a fight, there is a significant potential for low ticket sales. The art of trash-talking has swept into many other sports like basketball, soccer, and football. Ali paved the way for athletes to express themselves. The utilization of the rope-a-dope by legendary fighters such as Tyson Fury, Manny Pacquiao, and UFC legend Israel Adesanya, to name a few, really exhibit his influence in the 21st century. Many do not know that the fight between Ali and Inoki birthed MMA. It was the first cross-mixed martial arts fight ever and had never been seen before. The integration between sports and social issues has always been a highly debated topic, with many believing that sports should be kept separate from social issues and politics, while others believe it presents a great opportunity to raise awareness on social issues in front of the public. Today we see NBA and NFL players such as Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James kneeling during the national anthem to raise awareness for social issues with no fear of repercussion. These are some of the things that Ali did, which changed boxing and sports in general forever, and I don't believe he receives enough credit for that. He gets his credit for being the greatest of all time, but not so much for how he transcended boxing and popularized the sport into what it is today. There will never be another Muhammad Ali again. The greatest of all time.
I am the greatest.